The engine roared to life beneath her, the familiar vibration coursing through the cockpit as Captain Sarah Phoenix Mitchell adjusted her helmet one final time. Through the tinted visor of her Fi-18 Super Hornet, she could see 12 other aircraft lined up on the tarmac, each piloted by the Navy's most elite aviators. Men who had earned their wings through years of rigorous training, combat deployments, and countless hours pushing million-dollar aircraft to their absolute limits. Today, they would all fly together in the most challenging formation exercise the Navy had ever attempted. But as Sarah taxied toward the runway, she could hear the whispers crackling through the radio frequencies, comments that weren't meant. For official channels, snide remarks about the pretty face in Cockpit 13, questions about whether she belonged in the same airspace as these seasoned warriors. Little did they know that in the next 2 hours, everything they thought they knew about aviation excellence was about to be turned upside down. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah's journey to this moment began 28 years earlier in a small farming town in Iowa, where she spent her childhood gazing up at the endless prairie sky, watching contrails streak across the blue expanse like chalk marks on a cosmic blackboard. Her father, a crop duster pilot, would often take her up in his old Cessna, and from those early flights, something magical happened. While other children played with dolls or video games, Sarah would sit for hours with aviation magazines, memorizing the specifications of military aircraft, dreaming of the day she might pilot something faster than sound. The path to her dream, however, was far from smooth. When Sarah announced her intention to pursue military aviation at age 16, the reactions were swift and often brutal. Her high school guidance counselor suggested she consider more realistic career options, perhaps nursing or teaching. Even her own extended family questioned whether a young woman should be playing with dangerous toys meant for men. But Sarah's father, who had seen her natural instincts in the cockpit of his small plane, became her unwavering supporter. "She doesn't just fly the aircraft," he would tell anyone who questioned his daughter's ambitions. "She becomes one with it. I've never seen anything like it." Sarah's academic performance in high school was exceptional. She graduated valedictorian with perfect scores in mathematics and physics. But when she applied to the Naval Academy, the real challenges began. During her initial interviews, one panel member actually asked if she was serious about flying or just looking for a husband among the officer corps. Another suggested that her delicate features might not withstand the physical demands of high-G maneuvers. These comments, rather than discouraging her, only strengthened her resolve. At the Naval Academy, Sarah faced a gauntlet of both academic and physical challenges designed to separate the committed from the merely curious. The flight training program had a notorious washout rate. Nearly 60% of candidates never made it to advanced training. But Sarah thrived in this environment. While her male classmates often struggled with the multitasking demands of modern aviation, simultaneously managing complex flight systems, navigation, communications, and tactical awareness, Sarah seemed to process information with an almost supernatural efficiency. Her instructors began to notice something unusual about her flying style. Most pilots, even very good ones, showed clear signs of cognitive overload during complex maneuvers. Heart rates would spike, radio communications would become clipped and tense, and minor errors would cascade into larger problems. But Sarah remained eerily calm, her voice steady over the radio even during the most demanding exercises. Her aircraft movements were precise, economical, and somehow more graceful than those of her peers. Lieutenant Commander Jake "Razor" Harrison, one of her primary flight instructors, later described her flying as poetry in motion. He had trained hundreds of pilots over his career, many of whom went on to distinguished service, but he had never encountered anyone who seemed so naturally suited to high-performance aviation. Most pilots fight the aircraft, Harrison explained. Years later, they impose their will on the machine through brute force and determination. Sarah was different. She would listen to what the aircraft was telling her, respond to its needs, and somehow coax performance out of it that defied the technical specifications. It was like watching a master musician play a perfect instrument. But technical skill alone wasn't enough to overcome the institutional barriers Sarah faced. During her advanced training, she encountered instructors who seemed determined to find fault with her performance, officers who questioned whether women had the killer instinct necessary for combat aviation, and peers who sometimes treated her more like a novelty than a fellow warrior. The pressure was relentless and often deeply personal. One particularly difficult incident occurred during her carrier qualification training, the notoriously dangerous process of learning to land on the deck of an aircraft carrier. As Sarah approached the USS Abraham Lincoln for her first nighttime landing, a procedure that had ended the careers of many promising pilots, her landing signal officer made a comment over the radio that was clearly intended to rattle her concentration. "Phoenix, hope you're not worried about messing up your makeup down there," came the voice through her headset. Sarah's response became legendary among naval aviators. Without missing a beat, she executed a perfect night trap landing, one of the most challenging maneuvers in all of aviation, and then keyed her radio with a calm, professional tone. "Tower, Phoenix requesting permission to check my lipstick." Before the next approach, the flight deck crew erupted in cheers, and word of the exchange spread throughout the fleet within hours. But more importantly, Sarah had proven something to herself that night. She could perform under pressure, maintain her composure in the face of deliberate provocation, and execute complex maneuvers with a precision that impressed even her harshest critics. As Sarah progressed through the naval aviation pipeline, her reputation began to precede her. Stories circulated through the tight-knit community of military pilots' dailies of her uncanny ability to recover from dangerous situations, her innovative approaches to tactical problems, and her consistent performance under pressure. But with recognition came increased scrutiny and higher expectations. The transition to fleet squadrons brought new challenges. Sarah was assigned to VFA 103, the Jolly Rogers, one of the Navy's most prestigious fighter squadrons with a history dating back to World War II. The squadron's commanding officer, Captain Marcus Steele Rodriguez, was a combat veteran with 3 deployments and a reputation for running the most demanding training program in the fleet. When Sarah reported for duty, Rodriguez made his expectations crystal clear. "Mitchell," he said during their first meeting, "I don't care what anyone says about your gender, your appearance, or your academy performance. In this squadron, you prove yourself every single day, in the air, where it matters. You want to be treated like everyone else? Then you better be prepared to perform like everyone else or better." Sarah's squadron mates presented a mixed reception. Some, particularly the younger officers, were genuinely excited to fly with someone whose reputation for precision and innovation had reached almost mythical proportions. Others, typically the more experienced pilots, remained skeptical. They had seen promising aviators flame out under the pressures of operational flying, and they wondered whether Sarah's academy success would translate to the unforgiving environment of fleet operations. The first major test came during a complex multi-aircraft exercise over the Nevada desert. The scenario involved a simulated strike mission against heavily defended targets, with Sarah flying as wingman to Captain Tony Viper Castellanos, a 15-year veteran with multiple combat deployments. The exercise was designed to test every aspect of tactical aviation formation flying, threat evasion, target acquisition, and precision weapons delivery, all while maintaining constant communication and situational awareness. As the formation approached the target area, the exercise controllers began introducing complications. Simulated surface-to-air missile threats forced rapid altitude changes. Electronic warfare systems jammed communications, and weather conditions deteriorated beyond the original briefing parameters. One by one, aircraft began experiencing simulated mechanical failures that required immediate tactical adjustments. During the most critical phase of the exercise, Viper's aircraft suffered a complete navigation system failure just as they entered the most heavily defended airspace. Without functioning GPS or inertial navigation, he was essentially flying blind through a maze of simulated threats. The standard procedure would have been to abort the mission and return to base, but Sarah had a different idea. "Viper, Phoenix," she radioed, her voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "I've got your position. Form up on my left wing and maintain visual contact. I can navigate us through the through envelope using terrain masking." What happened next was later described by the exercise controllers as one of the most impressive displays of tactical flying they had ever witnessed. Sarah not only guided her flight leader safely through the simulated threat environment, but did so while simultaneously executing her own attack run with surgical precision. She threaded the formation through valleys and canyons, using the natural terrain to mask their approach from simulated radar systems, all while maintaining perfect formation discipline. But the most remarkable aspect of her performance wasn't the tactical execution. It was her ability to process and communicate vast amounts of information while under extreme pressure. Throughout the 30-minute exercise, Sarah provided continuous updates to Viper about their position, the threat environment, and optimal flight paths, all while managing her own aircraft systems and weapons delivery sequence. When the formation finally emerged from the exercise area and landed back at Fallon Naval Air Station, Viper was the first to acknowledge what had happened. As they shut down their engines on the flight line, he pulled off his helmet and looked across at Sarah with genuine respect. "Phoenix," he said, his voice carrying over the noise of cooling jet engines. "I've been flying these birds for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like that. You didn't just save the mission, you elevated everyone's performance." Word of the exercise spread quickly through the naval aviation community. The debrief session, normally a routine analysis of tactical decisions and performance metrics, became an impromptu masterclass as other pilots gathered to understand how Sarah had managed such complex navigation and communication tasks simultaneously. Her ability to maintain spatial awareness while processing multiple information streams had impressed even the most experienced aviators. But Sarah's growing reputation also brought unwanted attention. As stories of her exceptional flying spread, some began to question whether the accounts were exaggerated. There were whispers that her male colleagues were being overly generous in their assessments, that squadron politics might be influencing performance evaluations, or that the Navy was promoting her accomplishments for public relations purposes. These doubts reached a crescendo when Sarah was selected for the Navy's most elite training program, the Navy Strike Fighter Tactics Instructor Program, better known as Top Gun. The selection itself was highly competitive, with only the top 1% of naval aviators ever receiving an invitation. But when Sarah's name appeared on the list, the reaction was swift and often harsh. Anonymous comments on military aviation forums questioned whether she had been selected based on merit or diversity considerations. Some suggested that Top Gun was lowering standards to accommodate female pilots. Others speculated that her selection was part of a broader political agenda rather than a recognition of genuine tactical expertise. The criticism stung, but it also motivated Sarah to prepare for Top Gun with an intensity that surprised even her closest friends. She spent months studying every aspect of air-to-air combat, memorizing the performance characteristics of potential adversary aircraft, and analyzing historical engagement data. She flew extra training sorties, practiced emergency procedures until they became second nature, and engaged in countless hours of tactical discussions with experienced combat pilots. when Sarah finally reported to Top Gun at Naval Air Station Fallon, she was as prepared as any pilot in the program's history. But she also knew that preparation alone wouldn't be enough. She would need to prove herself against the most skilled aviators the Navy had to offer, in an environment where even the smallest mistake could end a career. The Top Gun facility at Naval Air Station Fallon represented the pinnacle of naval aviation. Training. Located in the stark beauty of the Nevada desert, the base housed the most advanced flight simulators, tactical analysis centers, and adversary aircraft in the world. For 40 years, Top Gun had been refining the art and science of air-to-air combat, producing the elite pilots who would lead Navy squadrons in combat operations around the globe. Sarah's class consisted of 12 pilots, each representing the top graduates from their respective squadrons. These were not ordinary naval aviators. They were the pilots whom other pilots looked up to, the ones who consistently demonstrated exceptional skill, judgment, and leadership under pressure. Among her classmates were pilots with combat experience from multiple deployments, test pilots who had pushed experimental aircraft to their limits, and squadron leaders who had already distinguished themselves in the fleet. The program's curriculum was brutal in its intensity. Students flew multiple sorties daily, participated in complex tactical scenarios, and engaged in detailed academic study of air combat theory. Every flight was recorded and analyzed frame by frame, every decision scrutinized and debated, every mistake examined as a learning opportunity. The washout rate was significant. Approximately 20% of students failed to complete the program, their naval aviation careers often ending with their Top Gun dismissal. Commander Patricia "Hawk" Williams, the first woman to serve as a Top Gun instructor, became Sarah's primary mentor during the program. Williams had broken her own barriers 15 years earlier, facing many of the same challenges and prejudices that Sarah now encountered. But she also understood that Sarah's situation was unique, the level of scrutiny and expectation surrounding her performance far exceeded what Williams had experienced. "The pressure you're under is different," Williams explained during one of their private counseling sessions. "When I went through Top Gun, I was fighting to prove that one woman could succeed in this environment. Your success or failure will be seen as a judgment on all women in naval aviation. It's not fair, but it's reality." The academic phase of Top Gun training proved to be Sarah's first major challenge. While her flying skills had always been exceptional, the program's theoretical requirements demanded a deep understanding of physics, mathematics, and tactical theory that went far beyond practical application. Students were expected to analyze complex engagement scenarios, calculate optimal intercept geometries, and understand the subtle relationships between aircraft performance, weapons systems, and environmental conditions. Sarah threw herself into the academic work with characteristic determination. She spent 18-hour days studying engagement analyses, memorizing aircraft performance data, and working through complex tactical problems. Her methodical approach and natural analytical abilities served her well, and she quickly established herself as one of the top academic performers in her class. But it was in the flying phase of training that Sarah truly began to distinguish herself. Top Gun's air-to-air training scenarios were designed to replicate the most challenging combat situations pilots might encounter. Students flew against highly experienced adversary pilots flying aircraft configured to simulate potential enemy fighters. These adversary pilots were themselves among the Navy's most skilled aviators. With extensive training in foreign tactics and aircraft capabilities, the first major air-to-air exercise pitted Sarah against Lieutenant Commander Rick "Bandit" Thompson, a legendary adversary pilot with over 3,000 hours of dissimilar air combat training. Thompson flew an F-16 configured to simulate a Russian Su-27, and his reputation for aggressive, unpredictable tactics had humbled many overconfident TOPGUN students. As Sarah climbed to the engagement altitude in her FA-18, she reviewed the tactical situation one final time. The scenario called for a beyond visual range intercept, followed by a close-in dogfight if the initial engagement was unsuccessful. Her aircraft was loaded with simulated long-range missiles and equipped with sophisticated radar and electronic warfare systems, but she knew that Thompson's experience and tactical knowledge made him a formidable opponent regardless of equipment. Advantages: the engagement began 40 miles apart, with both aircraft approaching at high speed and altitude. Sarah's radar quickly acquired Thompson's aircraft, and she began the complex process of setting up a missile shot while simultaneously defending against his potential attacks. The electronic warfare environment was intense with both aircraft. Using sophisticated jamming and deception techniques to mask their true positions and intentions, what happened next surprised both the exercise controllers and the other students monitoring the engagement. Instead of following conventional intercept procedures, Sarah executed a series of unexpected maneuvers that forced Thompson to react to her initiative rather than pursuing his own tactical plan. She used her aircraft's superior radar capabilities, not just to track Thompson's position, but to predict his likely responses to her movements. The engagement evolved into a complex three-dimensional chess match, with both pilots maneuvering at high speed while trying to gain tactical advantage. Sarah's approach was unlike anything Thompson had encountered in his years as an adversary pilot. She seemed to anticipate his moves several steps ahead, positioning her aircraft to exploit brief windows of opportunity that other pilots might not even recognize. When the simulated missile shot finally came, it was Sarah who achieved the lock-on. First, her timing and positioning creating a tactical situation from which Thompson could not escape. The exercise controllers called Fox 3, Phoenix has the kill, and the engagement was over, but what impressed the instructors most wasn't just the successful outcome, it was the innovative tactics Sarah had employed to achieve it. During the detailed debrief session, she explained her decision-making process with a clarity and depth of understanding that impressed even the most experienced instructors. She had not simply executed a textbook intercept. She had adapted standard procedures to create new tactical solutions. Commander Williams, observing from the ground control center, realized she was witnessing something special. In her 15 years as a Top Gun instructor, she had seen many exceptional pilots, but Sarah's combination of tactical innovation, technical precision, and calm decision-making under pressure was truly remarkable. The success of Sarah's first air-to-air engagement was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, she consistently demonstrated an ability to find tactical solutions that other pilots missed, to remain calm under pressure that overwhelmed her peers, and to execute complex maneuvers with a precision that defied explanation. Her reputation within the Top Gun community began to grow, and with it came both respect and resentment from different quarters. Word of Sarah's TOPGUN performance began spreading through the naval aviation community like wildfire. Her tactical innovations during air-to-air engagements were being studied and incorporated into official doctrine, and her calm professionalism under extreme pressure had earned the respect of even her harshest critics. But with success came an entirely new level of scrutiny that would test her resilience in ways she had never imagined. The media attention began innocuously enough. A routine Navy public affairs article about Top Gun graduates mentioned Sarah's exceptional performance, noting that she had achieved the highest academic scores in her class while also demonstrating remarkable tactical proficiency in the air. The article was picked up by a military aviation blog, then by mainstream news outlets, and within weeks, Sarah found herself thrust into the national spotlight as a symbol of women's advancement in military roles. Television interviews, magazine profiles, and speaking engagements followed in rapid succession. While Sarah appreciated the opportunity to inspire young women considering military careers, She was uncomfortable with the way her story was being framed. Many of the articles focused more on her appearance and gender than on her tactical innovations and professional achievements. Headlines like "Beauty and Brains Take Flight" and "The Face That Launched 1,000 Fighters" made her cringe with their emphasis on superficial characteristics rather than substantive accomplishments. More problematic was the way the media attention affected her relationships within the naval aviation community. Some of her male colleagues began treating her differently, viewing her success through the lens of public relations rather than professional merit. Others questioned whether her media profile was influencing her career progression, suggesting that she was receiving favorable treatment because of her symbolic importance to the Navy's diversity initiatives. The situation reached a breaking point during a routine squadron briefing when Lieutenant Commander Dave "Spike" Morrison, a pilot with whom Sarah had previously enjoyed a professional relationship, made a comment that cut deeply. After Sarah presented a tactical analysis of a recent training exercise, Morrison muttered loud enough for others to hear, "Easy to be confident when you know the cameras are rolling." The comment was unfair and unprofessional, but it reflected a sentiment that Sarah knew existed among some of her peers. The suggestion that her achievements were somehow manufactured or exaggerated for publicity purposes undermined everything she had worked to accomplish. That evening, Sarah requested a private meeting with her commanding officer to address the growing tension within the squadron. Captain Rodriguez listened carefully as Sarah explained her concerns about how the media attention was affecting her relationships and credibility within the unit. His response was both supportive and challenging. "Mitchell," he said, "you're dealing with something that most pilots never have to face. The spotlight is on you in a way that's unprecedented, and some people are going to question your motives and achievements regardless of what you do. But here's what I know from flying with you and watching your performance. You're one of the finest tactical aviators I've encountered in 25 years of naval service. Don't let other people's insecurities diminish your confidence in your own abilities." Rodriguez then presented Sarah with an opportunity that would either vindicate her reputation or potentially end her career. The Navy was organizing a special demonstration flight for a gathering of international military leaders and defense officials. The event would showcase American naval aviation capabilities, with particular emphasis on precision formation flying and tactical maneuvering. Rodriguez wanted Sarah to lead a 12-aircraft formation in a complex aerial demonstration that would be observed by military leaders from allied nations around the world. "This isn't about publicity," Rodriguez emphasized. "This is about demonstrating the absolute highest level of naval aviation proficiency to people who understand the difference between media hype and genuine tactical excellence. If you succeed, you'll have proven your capabilities to the most knowledgeable audience possible. If you fail, it will be very public and very career-limiting." Sarah accepted the challenge without hesitation, knowing that this demonstration represented both the opportunity she had been seeking and the test she had been dreading. She would be flying with 11 other pilots, all of whom had been specifically selected for their exceptional skills and experience. These were not ordinary squadron pilots. They were the Navy's most elite aviators, including several Top Gun instructors, test pilots from Patuxent River, and combat veterans with multiple deployments. The formation they would be flying was unprecedented in its complexity. The demonstration called for a series of precision maneuvers that would showcase not only individual flying skills, but also the ability to maintain perfect coordination among multiple aircraft operating in close proximity at high speed. The routine included formation changes, tactical splits and rejoins, and a finale involving a synchronized weapons delivery pass that required split-second timing and absolute precision. Preparing for the demonstration required weeks of intensive planning and practice. Sarah found herself working 18-hour days, studying every aspect of the planned routine, calculating optimal airspeeds and altitudes for each maneuver, and developing contingency procedures for potential emergencies. The physical demands were exhausting, but the mental pressure was even more intense. Each practice flight was scrutinized by senior officers and technical experts, who analyzed every aspect of the formation's performance. Radio communications were recorded and reviewed. Aircraft tracking data was examined frame by frame, and even minor deviations from planned flight paths were discussed in detail during lengthy debrief sessions. Sarah's role as formation leader meant that she was responsible not only for her own aircraft's performance but also for the coordination and safety of the entire 12-aircraft formation. She had to maintain constant situational awareness of every other pilot's position and status, while simultaneously executing complex maneuvers and communicating with ground controllers. The cognitive workload was enormous, but Sarah found herself thriving under the pressure. During one particularly challenging practice session, the formation encountered severe turbulence while attempting a complex crossover maneuver at low altitude. The sudden wind shear caused several aircraft to deviate from their assigned positions, creating a potentially dangerous situation that required immediate corrective action. Sarah's response was both swift and precise. She calmly adjusted the formation's altitude and spacing while providing clear, concise instructions to each pilot about their new positions. Lieutenant Commander Jake "Torch" Harrison, flying as her immediate wingman, later described the incident as a masterclass in formation leadership. "Phoenix didn't just manage the emergency," he explained during the debrief. "She anticipated how the turbulence would affect each aircraft differently based on their positions and weights, and she adjusted the formation geometry to compensate before the problem got worse. I've been flying formations for 12 years, and I've never seen that level of spatial awareness and tactical thinking." But even as her technical skills continued to impress her fellow pilots, Sarah was aware that some still harbored doubts about her capabilities. She overheard conversations in the ready room where pilots speculated about whether she would be able to handle the pressure of performing in front of such a high-profile audience. Others wondered whether the complexity of the planned demonstration might be beyond the capabilities of any pilot, regardless of their experience or skill level. The morning of the demonstration dawned clear and still. Perfect flying weather that would allow the formation to perform at its absolute best. As Sarah conducted her pre-flight inspection in the pre-dawn darkness, she could feel the weight of expectation settling around her like a heavy cloak. In just a few hours, she would be leading 12 of the Navy's most elite pilots in a demonstration that would be witnessed by military leaders from 37 nations. The international audience gathering at Naval Air Station Oceana represented the highest levels of military aviation leadership from around the world. Among the observers were generals and admirals who had commanded air operations in major conflicts, test pilots who had pushed experimental aircraft beyond their design limits, and defense officials responsible for multi-billion-dollar aircraft procurement decisions. These were people who understood aviation at the most sophisticated level, and who would immediately recognize the difference between genuine excellence and mere spectacle. As Sarah walked through her aircraft's exterior inspection, checking control surfaces, weapons pylons, and landing gear, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Every challenge she had faced, every doubt she had overcome, and every barrier she had broken had prepared her for this test. But she also knew that all of her previous achievements would be meaningless if she failed to deliver a flawless performance. Today, the other 11 pilots in the formation represented a cross-section of naval aviation excellence. There was Commander Lisa Venom Chun, a test pilot from Patuxent River who had been the first person to fly several experimental aircraft designs. Lieutenant Commander Mike "Thunder" Rodriguez brought combat experience from 3 deployments, including air-to-air victories during recent conflicts. Captain James "Iceman" Foster was a former Top Gun instructor whose precision flying had become legendary within the naval aviation community. Each of these pilots had volunteered for the demonstration, knowing that their own reputations would be tied to its success or failure. They were putting their trust in Sarah's leadership, betting their careers on her ability to coordinate and execute the most complex formation routine ever attempted by naval aviators. The responsibility was enormous, but Sarah drew strength from the knowledge that these exceptional pilots had confidence in her abilities. The briefing session began at 0600 hours, with Sarah leading a detailed review of the planned demonstration sequence. Using a large screen display and precise timing charts, she walked through each phase of the routine, discussing airspeeds, altitudes, formation positions, and communication procedures. Every aspect of the flight had been planned and rehearsed, but Sarah knew that actual performance often deviated from even the most detailed plans. "Remember," she told the assembled pilots, "this routine pushes all of us to our limits. We're flying closer, faster, and more precisely than any formation in naval aviation history. If anyone experiences any difficulty maintaining position or executing a maneuver, call it out immediately. We're a team up there, and we succeed or fail together." The walk to the aircraft was conducted in professional silence, each pilot focused on the mental preparation necessary for such a demanding flight. Sarah's FA-18 Super Hornet had been configured specifically for the demonstration, with external fuel tanks removed to optimize maneuverability and special paint schemes applied to enhance visibility during formation maneuvers. The aircraft had been inspected multiple times by maintenance crews, and every system had been tested and retested to ensure peak performance. As Sarah strapped into her ejection seat and began the engine start sequence, she could see the grandstand, where hundreds of international observers were taking their seats. Television cameras and recording equipment surrounded the flight line, ready to capture every moment of the demonstration for broadcast around the world. The pressure was immense, but Sarah had learned to channel that energy into enhanced focus and concentration. The taxi sequence alone was a complex choreography, with 12 aircraft moving in precise formation from their parking spots to the runway. Sarah led the formation with smooth, deliberate movements, maintaining constant radio communication with the other pilots while monitoring their positions through her mirrors and peripheral vision. Ground crews and safety observers watched every movement, ready to abort the demonstration if they detected any sign of unsafe operation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As the formation reached the runway threshold, Sarah performed a final radio check with each pilot, confirming that all aircraft systems were functioning properly and that everyone was ready for takeoff. The response was unanimous. 12 of the Navy's finest pilots expressing their readiness to follow her leadership into the most challenging flight of their careers. "Tower, Phoenix flight of 12, ready for takeoff," Sarah transmitted, her voice calm and professional, despite the enormous stakes involved. "Phoenix flight, cleared for takeoff, winds calm, visibility unlimited." "Good luck," came the reply from the control tower, where senior officers and technical experts were monitoring every aspect of the demonstration. The takeoff sequence required perfect timing and spacing, with 12 aircraft launching within a 90-second window while maintaining safe separation distances. Sarah advanced her throttles to full military power, feeling the familiar surge of acceleration as her Super Hornet gathered speed down the runway. In her mirrors, she could see the other 11 aircraft following in precise intervals, their engines creating a thunderous symphony that echoed across the airfield. As her aircraft lifted off the runway and began climbing toward the demonstration altitude, Sarah felt a familiar sense of calm settle over her. This was where she belonged, in the cockpit of a high-performance aircraft, leading other exceptional pilots in pursuit of aviation excellence. All of the doubts, criticisms, and challenges she had faced over the years seemed to fade away, replaced by pure focus on the task ahead. The formation joined up with mechanical precision, each aircraft sliding into its assigned position with smooth, confident movements. From her position as flight leader, Sarah could see the perfect symmetry of the formation spread out behind and beside her. 12 of the world's most advanced fighter aircraft flown by pilots whose skills had been honed through years of intensive training and operational experience. Phoenix Flight, check in, Sarah transmitted as the formation reached demonstration altitude. 2, came the immediate response from her wingman. 3, followed the next pilot, and so on through the entire formation until all 12 aircraft had confirmed their readiness. Below them, the grandstand filled with international observers looked like a small speck on the airfield, but Sarah knew that hundreds of pairs of experienced eyes were tracking their every movement through binoculars and optical equipment. In a few moments, those observers would witness either a triumph of precision flying or a disaster that would be analyzed and discussed for years to come. Phoenix Flight, you are cleared to commence demonstration. Winds calm, visibility unlimited, crackled the voice of the Air Operations Officer through Sarah's headset. Below them, the sprawling complex of Naval Air Station Oceana looked like a detailed model, with the grandstand of international observers clearly visible as a small cluster of dark figures against the concrete backdrop of the airfield. Sarah took a deep breath and keyed her radio. Phoenix Flight, let's show them what naval aviation excellence looks like. Stand by for Maneuver 1. The first phase of the demonstration involved a series of precision formation changes designed to showcase the pilot's ability to maintain exact positioning while transitioning between different geometric configurations. Sarah began with a gentle bank to the right, leading the 12 aircraft formation in a wide arc that would bring them directly over the viewing area at exactly 500 feet altitude. As the formation entered the turn, each pilot had to adjust not only their bank angle and airspeed to match Sarah's movements, but also modify their position relative to the other aircraft to maintain the precise spacing required for the maneuver. The cognitive workload was enormous. Each pilot was simultaneously monitoring their own aircraft's performance, tracking the movements of their immediate neighbors, and listening to Sarah's radio instructions while maintaining visual contact with the formation leader. From her position at the front of the formation, Sarah could see the entire airfield spread out below them, with hundreds of observers craning their necks to watch the approaching aircraft. She knew that among those observers were some of the most experienced military aviators in the world, people who could instantly recognize the difference between competent formation flying and the kind of precision excellence that the demonstration was designed to showcase. Phoenix Flight, prepare for diamond formation, Sarah transmitted as they approached the first major configuration change. The maneuver required the 12 aircraft to transition from their current spread formation into a tight diamond pattern, with Sarah at the point and the other aircraft arranged in precise, geometric symmetry behind her. The transition began smoothly, with each pilot moving their aircraft through the three-dimensional space with balletic grace. But as the formation tightened into the diamond configuration, the margin for error decreased dramatically. Aircraft that had been separated by hundreds of feet were now operating within wingspan distances of each other, requiring split-second timing, absolute precision to avoid potential collisions. Lieutenant Commander Chun, flying in the number 4 position, later described the sensation of the diamond formation as like being part of a single, 12-part organism. The level of concentration required was intense. Any momentary lapse in attention or slight error in judgment could result in a catastrophic accident that would not only end careers but potentially cost lives. As the formation passed directly over the grandstand in perfect diamond configuration, Sarah could see camera flashes and video equipment tracking their movement. She knew that this moment was being recorded and transmitted around the world, representing not just her own capabilities, but the entire naval aviation community's standard of excellence. "Phoenix Flight, prepare for tactical split," Sarah announced, as they climbed away from the airfield for the next phase of the demonstration. This maneuver was designed to simulate combat tactics with the 12 aircraft formation, dividing into 3 separate flights that would execute coordinated attacks on simulated ground targets. The tactical split required each 4 aircraft flight to separate from the main formation and execute independent navigation and attack sequences while maintaining coordination with the other flights. Sarah retained control of the lead flight while delegating command of the other 2 flights to Commander Foster and Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. The complexity was staggering. 3 separate formation leaders had to coordinate their movements across dozens of miles of airspace while executing precision attacks on targets that required split-second timing. As Sarah's flight dove toward their assigned target area, she maintained constant radio communication with the other flight leaders, while simultaneously managing the tactical formation of her own 4 aircraft. The attack sequence required a high-speed, low-altitude approach followed by a simulated weapons delivery and rapid egress, all while maintaining precise formation discipline and avoiding potential conflicts with the other attacking flights. "Phoenix 1-1 in hot," Sarah transmitted as her flight entered the final attack phase, diving toward the simulated target at over 400 knots while maintaining formation, spacing measured in mere feet between aircraft. The precision required was extraordinary. Each pilot had to focus simultaneously on their individual attack parameters while maintaining perfect coordination with their flight mates. The weapons delivery sequence lasted only seconds, but it required months of practice to execute properly. Each aircraft had to arrive at the release point within milliseconds of the planned timing, deliver their simulated ordnance with surgical precision, and then execute a coordinated egress that would clear the target area without interfering with the other attacking flights. As Sarah pulled out of the attack dive and began climbing away from the target area, she could hear the radio calls from the other flight leaders confirming successful attacks. The tactical split had been executed flawlessly, with all 12 aircraft delivering their simulated weapons on target while maintaining the split-second timing necessary for such a complex coordinated attack. "Phoenix Flight, rejoin for finale." Sequence, Sarah transmitted as the 3 separate flights maneuvered to reform into a single 12-aircraft formation. The rejoin phase was arguably the most challenging part of the entire demonstration, requiring precise navigation and timing to bring 36 aircraft moving at high speed back together into a coordinated formation. The finale sequence had been designed to showcase the absolute pinnacle of formation flying precision. The 12 aircraft would execute a series of coordinated maneuvers that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in tactical aviation. The routine included synchronized rolls, crossing patterns, and a spectacular finish, involving all 12 aircraft converging from different directions to form a perfect star pattern directly over the viewing area. As the 3 flights began their approach for the rejoin, Sarah felt a familiar sense of calm focus settling over her. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the ultimate test of her leadership, tactical skills, and ability to coordinate the actions of 11 other exceptional pilots in the most demanding flying environment imaginable. The formation came together with mechanical precision, each aircraft sliding smoothly into its assigned position as if guided by invisible strings. In the space of less than 2 minutes, 12 separate aircraft moving at high speed through 3-dimensional space had reformed into a single, coordinated formation ready to execute the most challenging sequence of the entire demonstration. "Phoenix Flight, commencing finale sequence in 30 seconds." Sarah transmitted as the 12 aircraft formation approached the most challenging phase of the entire demonstration. Below them, the grandstand full of international observers represented the most knowledgeable aviation audience ever assembled. Generals, Admirals, test pilots, and defense officials from 37 nations, all watching with the trained eyes of professionals who understood exactly what they were witnessing. The finale sequence would push the boundaries of formation flying beyond anything previously attempted in naval aviation. The routine called for the 12 aircraft to execute a series of synchronized maneuvers that would require split-second timing, perfect spatial awareness, and absolute trust between pilots who were operating their aircraft within feet of each other at speeds exceeding 350 knots. Sarah's voice remained calm and professional as she began the countdown. Phoenix flight, stand by for synchronized barrel roll in 5, 4, 3, 2, mark. At her command, all 12 aircraft began a coordinated, rolling maneuver that turned the formation into a spinning cylinder of precisely choreographed metal and thrust, each pilot maintaining exact positioning relative to their neighbors while executing a complex three-dimensional rotation from the ground. The maneuver appeared almost supernatural. 12 separate aircraft moving as a single entity, their contrails creating geometric patterns against the clear blue sky. But inside each cockpit, the pilots were experiencing the most demanding flying of their careers. Each had to maintain perfect airspeed and altitude while simultaneously monitoring their position relative to 11 other aircraft, all while pulling G-forces that pressed them deep into their ejection seats. Lieutenant Commander Foster, flying in the number 6 position, later described the sensation. You're not just flying your own aircraft anymore. You become part of something larger, where every input on your controls affects not just your position, but the entire formation's geometry. The level of trust required is absolute. One mistake by any pilot could result in a catastrophic collision. As the formation completed the barrel roll and leveled out, Sarah immediately began setting up for the next phase. Phoenix flight, prepare for opposing crosses in 10 seconds. Flights 1 and 2, maintain current heading. Flight 3, prepare for 180-degree turn. The opposing crosses maneuver was the most dangerous element of the entire demonstration. 6 aircraft would continue straight ahead while the other 6 executed a complete reversal, resulting in 2 formations approaching each other head-on at a combined closure rate of over 700 knots. The timing had to be perfect. The formations would pass within 50 feet of each other, requiring precise navigation and unwavering nerves from all 12 pilots. Sarah led the first group of 6 aircraft in a slight climb as the second group, under Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's leadership, began their sweeping turn. The mathematics of the maneuver were unforgiving. Any deviation in timing, altitude, or heading could result in a mid-air collision that would be witnessed by hundreds of observers and broadcast around the world. Phoenix 1-1, I have visual on opposing formation, Sarah reported as the 2 groups of aircraft approached each other at tremendous speed. Through her windscreen, she could see the 6 aircraft of Rodriguez's flight growing larger with alarming rapidity, their nose-on profile making it difficult to judge their exact distance and closure rate. Phoenix 2-1, visual on lead formation, on profile for pass, Rodriguez responded, his voice steady despite the enormous pressure of leading 6 high-performance aircraft in a head-on approach with another formation. The moment of passage lasted only seconds, but it represented the culmination of months of planning, training, and preparation. As the 2 formations flashed past each other with mathematical precision, the observers on the ground witnessed one of the most spectacular displays of precision flying ever attempted. The separation between aircraft was measured in feet, the timing calculated to the millisecond, and the execution flawless. But even as the opposing crosses maneuver concluded successfully, Sarah was already preparing for the final and most challenging element of the demonstration, the star formation. Convergence. This maneuver would require all 12 aircraft to approach a single point in space from different directions, arriving simultaneously to form a perfect 12-pointed star pattern directly over the viewing area. Phoenix flight, prepare for star. Formation convergence. Sarah transmitted as the aircraft spread out across the sky, each pilot navigating to their assigned starting position for the finale. The complexity of the maneuver was staggering. 12 aircraft would approach the convergence point from 12 different compass headings, requiring precise navigation, timing, and spatial awareness to avoid collisions while creating the desired visual effect. The setup phase took several minutes as each aircraft maneuvered to their starting position, spread across a circular area with a radius of 15 miles. From the grandstand, the aircraft appeared as small specks scattered across the horizon, giving no indication of the spectacular finale that was about to unfold. Sarah monitored the radio traffic as each pilot reported reaching their assigned position. The coordination required was unprecedented in naval aviation. 12 separate aircraft, operating independently but in perfect synchronization, preparing to execute a maneuver that demanded split-second timing and absolute precision. Phoenix 2, in position, came the first report. Phoenix 3, in position, followed immediately. One by one, all 11 of Sarah's wingmen confirmed their readiness for the finale. Each pilot was now flying alone, separated from their formation mates by miles of empty sky, relying entirely on their navigation systems, timing calculations, and trust in Sarah's leadership to execute the convergence safely. Phoenix flight commenced star formation approach in 10 seconds. Sarah announced, her voice carrying the weight of command and the confidence that had brought her to this moment. All aircraft maintain assigned headings and airspeeds. Convergence point in 90 seconds. As Sarah began her own approach toward the convergence point, she could feel the enormous responsibility of coordinating the movements of 11 other exceptional pilots, each flying a $30 million aircraft at high speed toward a single point in space. The margin for error was non-existent. Any mistake in navigation, timing, or execution could result in multiple aircraft attempting to occupy the same airspace simultaneously. The approach phase required constant mental calculation as Sarah monitored her own aircraft's progress while tracking the positions and timing of the other 11 aircraft through radio reports and radar data. Each pilot was required to arrive at the convergence point within a 2-second window, approaching from their assigned heading at exactly 300 knots and 2,000 feet altitude. Phoenix flight, 60 seconds to convergence. Sarah transmitted as the formation began to take shape. From her position, she could now see several of the other aircraft as they approached from different directions, their contrails beginning to create the geometric pattern that would culminate in the star formation. The final 30 seconds of the approach required absolute precision from each pilot. Minor adjustments to airspeed and heading were necessary to ensure exact timing, but these corrections had to be made smoothly and subtly to avoid disrupting the overall coordination of the maneuver. Phoenix flight, 15 seconds to convergence. All aircraft report status, Sarah commanded as the 12 aircraft approached the moment of truth. Phoenix 2, on time, altitude, came the immediate response. Phoenix 3, on time, on altitude, followed the next pilot dot in rapid succession. All 11 pilots confirmed their readiness for convergence, their voices calm and professional. Despite the enormous pressure of the moment, Phoenix flight, 5 seconds to convergence, maintain heading and airspeed. Sarah transmitted as 12 of the Navy's most advanced fighter aircraft approached a single point in space from 12 different directions at exactly 300 knots. The mathematical precision required was staggering. Any deviation in timing, measured in fractions of a second, could result in a catastrophic collision that would be witnessed by the largest gathering of international military aviation experts in history. From the grandstand below, the approaching aircraft looked like 12 silver arrows converging on an invisible target in the sky. The observers, many of whom were themselves experienced pilots, watched in stunned silence as they witnessed a maneuver that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in formation flying. Camera crews tracked the approaching aircraft, capturing footage that would be analyzed and studied by aviation experts for years to come. "Mark, Mark, Mark," Sarah called as she reached the convergence point, her aircraft sliding into the center of what was rapidly becoming a perfect 12-pointed star formation. Around her, 11 other pilots executed the most precise flying of their careers, each arriving at their assigned position within milliseconds of the planned timing. The visual effect was breathtaking. For a brief moment, 12 A-18 Super Hornets formed a perfect geometric pattern against the blue sky, their contrails creating white lines that radiated outward like the spokes of a giant wheel. But more impressive than the visual spectacle was the demonstration of flying skill, coordination, and trust that had made the maneuver possible. Lieutenant Commander Chen, flying in the number 4 position, later described the experience. "When you're approaching that convergence point, you can see aircraft coming at you from every direction. Your training tells you to avoid them, but your discipline keeps you on course. In that moment, you're not just trusting your own skills, you're betting your life on the precision and professionalism of 11 other pilots." As the star formation held for exactly 10 seconds, long enough for the observers to fully appreciate the achievement, Sarah prepared for the final element of the demonstration. Phoenix flight, prepare for breakaway and individual aerobatic sequence. She transmitted, her voice still calm despite having just coordinated the most complex formation maneuver in naval aviation history. The breakaway sequence required each pilot to depart the star formation in a different direction while executing individual aerobatic maneuvers that would showcase their personal flying skills. Sarah led the sequence with a vertical climb that transitioned into a perfect loop, her aircraft tracing a flawless circle in the sky, while maintaining precise altitude and airspeed parameters. Around her, the other 11 pilots executed their own aerobatic routines, barrel rolls, Immelman turns, and split-S maneuvers that demonstrated the full performance envelope of their aircraft. But even during these individual displays, the pilots maintained radio contact and situational awareness to ensure that their separate maneuvers didn't conflict with each other in the shared airspace. Commander Foster executed a series of knife-edge passes that showcased his aircraft's maneuverability, flying with one wing pointing directly at the ground while maintaining perfect heading and altitude control. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez performed a dramatic vertical reversal that brought gasps from the observing crowd, pulling his aircraft through a maneuver that subjected him to over 6 times the force of gravity. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of the entire sequence was not any individual maneuver, but the seamless coordination that allowed 12 pilots to execute complex aerobatic routines in the same airspace without any conflicts or safety concerns. The level of situational awareness and communication required was unprecedented in aviation demonstration flying. As the individual aerobatic sequences concluded, Sarah began coordinating the formation, rejoined for the final pass over the viewing area. Phoenix flight, rejoined for show pass, standard echelon formation, she transmitted, beginning the process of bringing 12 scattered aircraft back together into a coordinated formation. The rejoin required precise navigation and timing, as each pilot maneuvered their aircraft back into position relative to Sarah's lead aircraft. The process looked effortless from the ground, but it required constant radio communication, careful speed and altitude management, and split-second decision-making from each pilot. As the 12 aircraft formation took shape for the final pass, Sarah could see the grandstand full of international observers directly ahead. These were people who understood aviation at the highest levels, generals who had commanded air operations in major conflicts, test pilots who had pushed experimental aircraft beyond their design limits, and defense officials responsible for multi-billion-dollar procurement decisions. Phoenix flight, Prepare for final show pass. Maintain formation discipline. Sarah transmitted as the formation approached the viewing area at 500 feet altitude and 350 knots. The final pass was designed to give the observers one last opportunity to appreciate the precision and professionalism of naval aviation at its finest. As the formation thundered over the grandstand with perfect spacing and alignment, Sarah could see hundreds of faces looking up at them, many with binoculars and cameras tracking their movement. She knew that among those observers were people who had initially questioned whether a woman could excel in the demanding world of tactical aviation, and others who had wondered whether the media attention surrounding her career had inflated her actual capabilities. The radio frequency erupted with congratulations as the formation climbed away from the airfield, having completed what many observers would later describe as the most impressive aviation demonstration they had ever witnessed. But for Sarah, the satisfaction came not from the applause or recognition, but from the knowledge that she had successfully led 11 exceptional pilots through the most challenging flying sequence of their careers without a single mistake or safety incident. Phoenix Flight, excellent work, came the voice of Admiral Patricia Hawkins, the Chief of Naval Operations, over the radio frequency. That was naval aviation at its absolute finest. Each of you should be proud of what you accomplished today. As the formation entered the landing pattern for their return to Naval Air Station Oceana, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Every challenge she had faced, every barrier she had overcome, and every doubt she had conquered had prepared her for this demonstration of excellence. But she also knew that today's success was not just about her individual achievements. It was about proving that excellence in aviation comes from skill, dedication, and professionalism, regardless of gender or appearance. The landing sequence was executed with the same precision that had characterized the entire demonstration, with 12 aircraft touching down on the runway in perfectly timed intervals. As Sarah taxied her aircraft back to the parking area, she could see ground crews and support personnel lining the taxiway, applauding and cheering the returning formation. As Sarah shut down her aircraft's engines and began the post-flight procedures, she could see a crowd of officials, media representatives, and fellow aviators gathered around the flight line. The demonstration had been witnessed by the largest gathering of international military aviation experts in history, and the immediate reaction was unlike anything she had experienced in her career. Even before she had removed her helmet, word was spreading through the aviation community that they had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. Admiral Hawkins was among the first to greet Sarah as she climbed down from her aircraft. The Chief of Naval Operations, a veteran pilot herself with over 4,000 flight hours, approached with an expression of genuine admiration and respect. "Captain Mitchell," the Admiral said, using Sarah's recent promotion in rank in 30 years of naval service, "I have never seen a more impressive demonstration of aviation excellence. What you and your team accomplished today will be studied and admired for generations." The other 11 pilots in the formation gathered around as Admiral Hawkins continued her remarks. These were some of the Navy's most elite aviators pilots, whose own skills and achievements had earned them places in this historic demonstration. But to a person, they acknowledged that Sarah's leadership had elevated their collective performance to levels they had never imagined possible. Commander Foster, the former TOPG-UN instructor, whose precision flying was legendary within the naval aviation community, spoke for the group. "Admiral, I've been flying formations for 18 years, and I can honestly say that today's demonstration redefined what I thought was possible in tactical aviation. Captain Mitchell didn't just lead this formation, she inspired each of us to perform beyond our individual capabilities." The international observers began making their way from the grandstand to the flight line, eager to meet the pilots who had just provided them with an unforgettable display of aviation excellence. Among them was General Sir David Harrison, the Royal Air Force's Chief of the Air Staff, who had flown combat missions over the Falklands and commanded RAF operations during multiple international conflicts. "Captain Mitchell," General Harrison said as he approached, "I've been observing military aviation demonstrations for over 25 years, and what I witnessed today was simply extraordinary. The precision, coordination, and innovation you displayed will influence how we think about formation flying for years to come." Similar comments came from military leaders representing air forces from around the world. General François Dubourg of the French Air Force described the demonstration as a masterpiece of tactical aviation. Air Marshal Rajesh Patel of the Indian Air Force called it the most impressive display of flying skill and coordination I have ever witnessed. Even representatives from nations with historically strained relationships with the United States expressed genuine admiration for what they had observed, but perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from her fellow pilots, the men and women, who understood the true difficulty of what Sarah had accomplished. As word of the demonstration spread through the naval aviation community, pilots from squadrons around the world began reaching out with messages of congratulation and respect. The technical aspects of the demonstration were analyzed and discussed in aviation journals, professional publications, and military academies. The star formation convergence was studied as a case example of precision navigation and timing. The opposing crosses maneuver became a textbook illustration of risk management and coordination under pressure. The entire sequence was incorporated into Top Gun curriculum as an example of formation flying excellence. More importantly, the demonstration had definitively answered the questions that had followed Sarah throughout her career. No one could any longer suggest that her achievements were the result of lowered standards, favorable treatment, or media manipulation. She had proven herself against the most demanding test possible, leading 11 of the Navy's most elite pilots. Through a demonstration that pushed the boundaries of what was considered achievable in tactical aviation, the media coverage that followed was extensive, but notably different from the earlier attention Sarah had received. Instead of focusing on her appearance or gender, journalists and aviation experts emphasized her technical innovations, leadership capabilities, and tactical expertise. The coverage treated her as what she had always wanted to be recognized, as an exceptional pilot whose achievements were based on skill, dedication, and professional excellence. Aviation Weekly magazine featured Sarah on its cover with the headline, "Precision Personified, the pilot who redefined formation flying." The article included detailed technical analysis of the demonstration, quotes from international military leaders, and recognition from fellow naval aviators. For the first time in her career, the media attention focused entirely on her professional accomplishments rather than superficial characteristics. The demonstration also had broader implications for women in military aviation. Young women considering careers as military pilots now had an unambiguous example of what was possible through dedication and excellence. Flight training programs reported increased interest from female candidates, and several international air forces began reviewing their own policies regarding women in combat aviation roles. Sarah's innovation in formation flying techniques was quickly incorporated into official naval aviation doctrine. The coordination methods she had developed for managing 12 aircraft formations became standard training at Top Gun and other advanced flying schools. Her approach to risk management during complex maneuvers was studied and taught to pilots around the world. 6 months after the demonstration, Sarah received notification of her selection for promotion to the rank of commander and assignment as the commanding officer of VFA 103, the prestigious Jolly Roger Squadron, where she had first served as a junior officer. The appointment made her one of the youngest commanding officers in naval aviation history, and the first woman to lead the legendary squadron. But perhaps more significant than any official recognition was the change in how she was perceived within the naval aviation community. The whispers and doubts that had once followed her were replaced by genuine respect and admiration from her peers. Pilots who had once questioned her capabilities now sought her advice on tactical innovations and formation flying techniques. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, the pilot who had once made disparaging comments about her media attention, approached Sarah several weeks after the demonstration with a formal apology. "Captain," he said, "I was wrong to question your abilities and motivations. What you accomplished that day was nothing short of remarkable, and you've earned the respect of every pilot in the Navy. The transformation was complete." Sarah Phoenix Mitchell had evolved from a talented pilot facing skepticism to a recognized leader whose innovations and achievements had advanced the entire field of tactical aviation. Her success had opened doors for future generations of women in military aviation, while proving that excellence knows no gender boundaries. 3 years after the historic demonstration, Sarah found herself standing in the same briefing room where she had once planned the 12-aircraft formation that would define her career. But now, as the commanding officer of VFA 103, she was addressing a new generation of naval aviators, including several young women who had been inspired by her example to pursue careers in military aviation. The squadron's ready room walls were decorated with photographs and memorabilia from decades of distinguished service, but prominently displayed was a framed image from the demonstration flight. 12 FA-18 Super Hornets in perfect star formation against a brilliant blue sky. The photograph had become iconic within the naval aviation community, symbolizing the pinnacle of precision flying and professional excellence. "The mission of this squadron," Sarah told the assembled pilots, "has always been to represent naval aviation at its absolute finest. That means constant innovation, relentless pursuit of excellence, and never accepting that something can't be done just because it hasn't been done before." Among her audience was Lieutenant Jennifer Spark Williams, a recent Top Gun graduate, who had specifically requested assignment to VFA 103 because of Sarah's reputation as a leader and innovator. Williams represented a new generation of female naval aviators who had entered the service knowing that gender was no barrier to achieving the highest levels of professional success. "Skipper," Williams asked during the question period, "how do you maintain focus when facing skepticism or criticism from people who question your capabilities?" Sarah's response reflected the wisdom gained through years of overcoming challenges and proving herself in the most demanding environments. "The only opinion that matters is the one reflected in your performance," she said. "Excellence speaks louder than critics, and competence answers every question about your capabilities. Focus on being the best pilot you can be, and let your flying do the talking." The advice had broader applications beyond aviation. Sarah had become a sought-after speaker at leadership conferences, military academies, and professional organizations, sharing lessons learned from her journey to the pinnacles of naval aviation. Her message was consistent: barriers exist to be overcome, excellence is gender neutral, and persistence combined with competence can achieve seemingly impossible goals. The demonstration flight had also led to Sarah's involvement in developing new training programs for international military aviation partnerships. Her expertise in formation flying and tactical innovation was sought by air forces around the world, and she had participated in exchange programs with allies to share American naval aviation techniques and learn from foreign military aviation traditions. The Royal Air Force had invited Sarah to participate in their annual air show at RAF Fairford, where she led a joint formation involving American, British, and French aircraft in a demonstration of international military cooperation. The flight required coordination between pilots speaking different languages, flying different aircraft types, and operating under different military procedures, challenges that Sarah's experience with complex formations had prepared her to both handle. During her assignment with the French Air Force's elite aerobatic team, Sarah had worked with pilots whose approach to formation flying emphasized artistic expression and aesthetic beauty. The collaboration had led to new techniques that combined American tactical precision with European stylistic innovation, creating formation routines that were both militarily relevant and visually spectacular. These international experiences had broadened Sarah's perspective on aviation excellence and leadership. She had learned that exceptional pilots existed in every air force, that innovation could come from unexpected sources, and that the principles of precision, discipline, and teamwork were universal among military aviators regardless of nationality or service branch. The recognition of Sarah's achievements had extended beyond military circles. She had been profiled in mainstream media as an example of breaking barriers and achieving excellence in traditionally male-dominated fields. Business schools use her career as a case study in leadership under pressure, innovation in complex organizations, and overcoming institutional resistance to change. Harvard Business School had invited Sarah to speak at their executive leadership program, where she addressed corporate executives about the leadership lessons learned from managing high-stakes situations with life or death consequences. Her presentation on decision-making under pressure and building trust in high-performance teams had been so well received that it became part of the school's permanent curriculum. But despite the recognition and opportunities that had followed her career-defining demonstration, Sarah remained focused on the fundamental aspects of naval aviation that had always motivated her: the pursuit of excellence, the continuous challenge of improvement, and the privilege of leading exceptional people in demanding circumstances. Current assignment involved developing the next generation of naval aviation tactics and training programs. The service was facing new challenges from rapidly advancing technology, evolving threat environments, and changing geopolitical circumstances that required innovative approaches to air warfare and pilot training. Sarah's team was working on integration of artificial intelligence systems with human pilots, development of formation tactics for next-generation aircraft, and training programs that would prepare naval aviators for conflicts that might be fundamentally different from those of previous generations. The work required the same innovative thinking and attention to detail that had characterized her approach to formation flying, but applied to much broader strategic challenges. The young pilots under her command represented the future of naval aviation, men and women who had grown up with advanced technology, who took gender equality in military service for granted, and who were eager to push the boundaries of what was possible in tactical aviation. Sarah's role was to channel their enthusiasm and capabilities toward achieving new levels of excellence while maintaining the safety and professionalism that were fundamental to military aviation. Looking back on her career, Sarah could see how each challenge and opportunity had prepared her for the next level of responsibility. The skepticism she had faced as a young pilot had taught her resilience. The technical demands of advanced training had developed her expertise. The pressure of high-profile demonstrations had proven her capabilities under stress. And the recognition that followed had provided platforms for broader influence and impact. But perhaps most importantly, her success had proven that excellence in any field is achieved through the same fundamental principles: dedication to continuous improvement, willingness to take calculated risks, commitment to supporting teammates, and refusal to accept limitations imposed by others' expectations or prejudices. The story that had begun with a young girl watching contrails across an Iowa sky had evolved into a career that had redefined what was possible in naval aviation. Sarah Phoenix Mitchell had not only proven that she belonged in the cockpit, she had demonstrated that she could lead others to achieve levels of performance that redefined the standards of excellence for her entire profession. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.